Hello, guys. Today we are having an interview with Konstantin Kladko. He is co-founder and CTO of Skale Network. It's a Ethereum layer 2 solution and as well a multi-chain of composed of an unlimited number of secure, decentralized, and highly performance Ethereum blockchains. Nice meeting you today, Konstantin, and it was great to meet you as well at Ethereum conference in Paris.
Thank you for the good words, Anna. Yeah, it was also really happy to meet you during the THCC conference. I think it was a really great place to meet people, especially that people hadn't have meetings for a long time due to COVID. So that was kind of the first meeting after the COVID shutdown. I think people were really happy to meet in person and communicate. So I think that was really great, a great venue.
Yeah, and it was a great gathering of all the Ethereum proponents. And so what are your impressions from the conference? How was it for you? Did you find any new partnerships?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, there are different conferences in Ethereum. Probably THCC and DEFCON are like the major ones. I think they canceled DEFCON this year. It was supposed to be in Colombia. So it goes to different places every time. THCC is always in Paris. Myself, actually, I do like THCC more because it's more democratic. There are more tracks, more people can talk. DEFCON, I think it used to be very informal, but it did become a little bit more formal. One of the reasons is just so many people go there. It's a bigger venue. It's also great, but ETHCC is more fun because it's more personal interaction and more like less formal. So actually I like ETHCC a lot. There are different other meetings, but I think none of them compares to either ETHCC or DEFCON.
Yeah, I agree, because the conference is quite different from most of the conferences in blockchain industry. It's very focused on builders, on very technical developers. And as well, today we had a network upgrade of Ethereum, London hardfork. So what do you think about it, and what influence will it have on the industry?
That's a really interesting question. So actually, there are several things. The London hard fork actually has several components, and one of them is really great. Actually, we're already using the same thing in our network. Basically, in the past, when you send a transaction or to the network, when you would pay and for transaction, different fees. So it was a little bit random. Algorithms were random. So if you would send a transaction, you would pay $1 and I would pay $2, and we would actually get included in the same block. So it's like you take taxi to the same destination as me and you pay twice less. Now with this new algorithm is guaranteed pretty much that all people pay the same price. So the new one is much better, and it has been in development for quite a long time. And I think for several years, people were trying to get it in. And I'm really happy that it actually is going to be included starting today, because also many applications will work more stably, because the gas price will not fluctuate so much. So it will be much more known in advance how much you need to pay. So I think that's going to be great. Probably there will be initially for the next couple of days. I'm going to be reading Twitter a lot because it's interesting. Some applications may break because it's actually quite a big change. So there may be some bugs and things, and people may need to adjust. But for the future, it's a fantastic algorithm. And actually, because our network is kind of easier to change, we actually moved to this algorithm in front of ETH mainnet. There's another part of the London fork, which is burning fees. And basically in the past, all of the fees were going to miners. And now part of the fees that you pay for transactions are actually burned. So it introduces deflation in the system. It decreases the number of tokens, of ETH tokens, that are in circulations. And I think that that's a change that's going to really support Ethereum price, because as you imagine, if you burn money, the rest of the money is going to go up in price. So there is a really good thing for the Ethereum price. There is a little bit of a controversy because, as you may imagine, miners were not so happy because they will lose a little of their profit. So it was a bit of a battle, but so this one, I think, long term is going to support Ethereum price. It did introduce some kind of tension with miners, but on the other hand, as we know, ETH is planning to move away from miners anyway. So the plan is sometime next year, they will move to proof of stake, which won't have miners at all. So it was kind of an understandable decision to do this fee burning, because long term, the price of ETH is really going to be supported by this. And many people want to make the price higher, as you mentioned. So these are the two pieces. But overall, I think it's a huge thing. And in our network, some of this actually existed before existing on the mainnet.
And can you tell about your journey in blockchain? When did you get in? What were your first ventures in crypto?
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. So actually, I'm a very typical like a nerd / startup guy. So pretty much like spent all of my life doing startups. I was actually doing research. I was like a researcher, a scientist in academia. So I have a PhD in physics and mathematics. So I spent some time in academia. I was working at Los Alamos National Lab in New Mexico, in the States. I was working at the Stanford University Department of Physics, also in California. So I spent some time in science, but then I moved to startups. And my first startup was a crypto startup started by Professor Bonnet. He's a very famous crypto professor at Stanford. So I joined the startup. And since that time, I was kind of like jumping from one startup to another. And most of them were in security or cryptography. But by the time Ethereum actually started, I was running a startup which was in big data and AI. And so we received money from investors, and we were building a platform for AI, which was supposed to be competing with Google and AWS. And at some point, we realized that it was really hard, as you imagine, to compete with Google. So the startup wasn't doing well. We were either interested in shutting it down or just like selling it for some small amount of money, just to become part maybe of Google or some other company. So we like thinking about shutting down the startup. And then suddenly this entire thing, the Ethereum, suddenly skyrocketed. And I knew about Bitcoin, like when Bitcoin started, but somehow I wasn't really interested because I'm like software engineer and Bitcoin is actually not programmable. So you can't really do much with it. So I wasn't really interested in the Bitcoin space. But when I found out about Ethereum, I got really excited because you can program it. And our investors pretty much told me, go and see how this thing works. So I got a ticket to Cancun. It was DEFCON 3 in Cancun. And I didn't even have a badge. So one of our VCs gave me a badge and I just got inside like the Cancun DEFCON 3 meeting. And I saw like Vitalik dancing on the stage and people were like celebrating, and the entire vibe was so crazy that I personally immediately it was in 2017, so it was DEFCON 3, the third conference. So it was like crazy, and the moment I got there, my decision was, even the VCs don't give me money, I'll still somehow like have to be part of it, because it's kind of becoming part of like internet in 1993, or becoming part of computers like in 1975. It was clear that it was such a great thing happening. So I got back, and VCs actually gave us some money just to think, basically not to shut down our startup. And so we've been thinking for a while what to do, and started to study blockchain and mathematics and like the algorithms. And pretty much, we were trying to find the simplest possible thing, because the simplest thing usually is the best to do. And at that time, people were talking about, already in 2017, people were talking about congestion, that Ethereum has so many transactions, not enough, one blockchain is not enough. And then, so basically the problem was very clear, that we needed to somehow speed it up. And then I also read some of the papers and messages that Satoshi Nakamoto wrote, and he was talking, Satoshi Nakamoto, even if you look at what he was saying, Satoshi Nakamoto always told people about many blockchains, because it was clear for him that one single blockchain can do good for a while, but when there are many users, you need more blockchains. One blockchain can't handle 6 billion people, right? 8 billion people. So we realized we need more blockchains. And because Ethereum is clearly the winner, it was actually a winner even in 2017. We clearly understood that we need just to have more Ethereum blockchains, and we need to somehow connect those blockchains to Ethereum mainnet. So that was a very straightforward decision that, one blockchain is not enough. We need to have more blockchains. We need to connect them to Ethereum, and they have to be also Ethereum compatible. And this was such a clear thing. And then so we actually decided this really fast. And our venture capitalists really, I think, got this. So they gave us money to build a prototype. So we built a prototype, and then we got money from investors to kind of go further. And the funny thing was that the idea of having this many blockchains actually was easy to formulate, but it was really hard to code, because you don't just code a single blockchain, you code many of them, and they need to interact. So we actually spent literally 3 years then coding these blockchains. And then we released our network last year, and initially it had staking features, but wasn't really complete in terms of all features. And then we needed to do things like interchain transfers, like how you transfer tokens from Ethereum mainnet to our chains. But then when we did this, another big thing was happening, this NFTs. And we realized we need to be able to store NFTs. And with NFTs, some of them can be music, some of them can be images, some of them can be videos. So we understood now we need to extend it to actually be able to store media, and just in general files, but in particular media. So we did this file storage, and then you need to be able to somehow display this music and video and images. So we added a web server, making essentially it's Web3 now. So now it's Ethereum chain, but it also looks like a web server. It looks like, your typical Airbnb or Expedia or whatever. You can view it in the browser. So in our case, you can actually see our blockchain in the browser. You can see all of these NFTs. You can actually even stream music. So we kept on adding these features. And long story short, pretty much we ended up releasing all of these features just last month. So now it took us pretty long time to actually build the thing. And then we are in a process now where really releasing DApps on the production network. We already released one DApp, which is an NFT. And now we're saying, well, it's a company called Covio. They actually they're putting NFTs on blockchain, such as cars, anything, real estate. So it's a company in Switzerland. And now we have another bunch of projects which are just about to be released.
Since the news that you selected 6 dApps to be released on your Scale Network.
Correct. Totally. And so we're going to be really releasing many of these guys. And so now it's really very busy time for us, because we are working with all of these people and helping them to actually have these projects running. I think, the way I see this is that at this particular moment of time, NFTs is definitely the thing. Probably 6 months ago, exchanges like Uniswap were really important. I think today NFTs just dwarf everything else. There's so much activity, not only smaller startups, but we have some really large companies that want to move their games, for instance, some really large gaming companies that they want to move their gaming items into NFTs. So NFTs has so much activity, probably number one. Still, you know, there are things like exchanges, people want to run things like Uniswap clones and other things. And some people do like games also on blockchain, but I think like the fastest thing at the moment is clearly NFTs.
Yeah, especially with the recent growth of Axie Infinity, and now everybody breeds these monsters, and despite the downturn on the market, NFTs started growing again.
Yeah, totally. And then the way I explain it to myself is that I mean the way I approach this is that, you know, there's like virtual world and this physical world. And if you've seen the Matrix movie, you know, the first movie, the Matrix series, right? This guy is talking about that there's actually the difference between the virtual world and physical world is very, very small. Like everything that you perceive or like you touch actually goes through your nerves and goes to your brain, and your brain actually gets this electric signals, which is not much different from your like mouse and monitor. When you touch something, you feel something, your brain doesn't touch it. The brain gets information through these electric signals. So the difference between the virtual world and the physical world is actually very, very tiny. People though are used to like create this difference. Here's the physical world, here's the virtual world. But people who are like younger, like people who are like teenagers now, there have been studies showing that for this generation, for people who are now teenagers, there's very little difference. They perceive this virtual world as real as physical. So if for my generation, buying a virtual item is kind of a little strange, for the new generation, virtual items and physical items have pretty much no difference. So people want to buy virtual paintings, they want to buy virtual gaming items. It's not a problem for them, it's virtual. The problem is though that these virtual items without blockchain, they are destructible, right? If you buy a real painting, you put it on the wall, and you're sure this painting will be there for 100 years, and then you can sell it to someone else, or someone else can sell it, right? Now, if you buy a virtual painting and it's just on the website might go down, and this virtual item will get destroyed. So there's this huge problem about virtual items, that they are easily destroyable. And blockchain, what it does is it actually makes virtual items as undestroyable as physical items by copying them many, 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 many times, right? If you create something on the Ethereum network, an NFT, it's copied to this many, 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 many computers. If you create something on our network, we also copy it to many, many, many computers. And through the mathematical algorithms, this blockchain is self-healing. So if one server goes down, another server goes up, it gets copied. So there's this constant copying happening in the system that actually guarantees to you that if you buy like a virtual painting stored on blockchain, and then you can wait for 50 years, and then it won't get destroyed, and then you can sell it. So that's why blockchain is so important, because it creates for these virtual objects this guarantee of actually existence. So that's why blockchain it needs to be used. And then once you have this property, now you have all kinds of things. You have movies, you have images, you have all crazy things. That's what blockchain
the biggest
does.
NFT use cases for you? Where do you see the biggest potential for NFTs?
I think there are several interesting cases. So for instance, if you look at actually, if you've been at ETHCC, you've seen these people who are like selling these different paintings. I think there are several use cases. One use case is I want to fight inflation, right? If there's so much of US dollars being printed, right? So I buy Bitcoin, but at the same time I can buy like a piece of Picasso, a painting, and long term, because everyone knows Picasso, right, or other like painters, right, like or Leonardo, right? Everyone knows this painting. I'm pretty sure if you buy a piece of it, 100 years passes by, the value of the painting will probably even grow. So it's a guarantee for me against inflation. It's a hedge, and I'm hedging. I'm buying maybe Bitcoin, I'm buying gold, I'm also buying a piece of a Picasso painting, or I'm buying a piece of a fraction of a collectible car. So that's a way for people that want to fight inflation to spread their bets and to kind of spread their portfolio. That's one use, and that's going to be huge, I think. The other use is very different, is where there's a painter, and I don't know. I don't know if this painter is going to be great or not. But first, the painting is very cheap, and then I want to support this painter. So I'm actually buying this NFT. I may actually make profit from this, but that's not the main driver for me to buy this NFT. The main driver, maybe I like this new artist, the musician, right? I really like the song, the musician may be unknown, and I'm buying this NFT because I want to support. That's number one, and the financial part is number two. So there are two very different use cases for NFTs. One of them is people that want to actually, in a financial way, hedge bets and fight inflation, and that's going to be huge, I think, because you're going to see the hedge funds and all of these Wall Street guys, using this as an instrument to actually hedge inflation. And there's a totally different thing where people just, buy things just to support someone. So I think those are going to be the two different use cases for NFTs. And I think even now you see both, and people buying NFTs for these two different reasons. And also, like for gaming, I think it's a little different. Yeah.
Do you own any NFTs?
Actually, I don't yet, but I think I'm gonna buy one. I was at the ETHCC and I was like going back and forth, like on the stairs. And if you remember, like they had the stairs, and then on the walls they had different paintings.
Yeah, there was one painting with Vitalik.
Yeah, the Vitalik one was crazy, and it's fun that Vitalik liked it. It's a crazy thing, but yeah, it was the Vitalik thing. And near Vitalik's painting, there was another one which I really liked. There was like a woman, like post-apocalyptic world, whatever. I just like the painting. So I think I'm gonna buy this one because I really like it. And somehow I got triggered. It's actually also very interesting because, I was like skeptical about NFTs for quite a long time. I think because I'm like the generation for like buying a virtual item is kind of strange psychologically. But now I think during the ETHCC, I really like jumped over the fence and somehow realized that, okay, that's nothing crazy about buying something virtual. So I'm about to buy NFT, which shows, interesting way that sometimes people don't believe in something, and then at some point they jump. And there are like people that do marketing. They know they're like early adopters that adapt, like people that really adapt new things, and like mainstream people who adapt only when they see early adopters adapting. And then basically at the tail, there are these people who don't want, like really conservative people. And usually they adapt things because there's a social pressure, because everyone is already using it. And then when these late adopters say, okay, I have to use this. And then that's how things get adopted. And it's interesting that pretty much any technology, people, when they start, they think it's crazy, and then they use it. Like for computers, it was the same. In the 60s, people thought that computers were like for scientists to, do scientific research. And the idea of having your own computer in your room or at home, that was like totally crazy. Right, and now everyone has a computer, so people go from total like denial to use, and I think we're starting to see this with NFTs.
Yeah, that's cool that you are getting into this NFTs space quite early.